really respectfully like to call on the African Ambassadors Group President, His Excellency Ambassador Felizwe Dlamini, Ambassador of Eswatini, to deliver the official welcome opening. Your Excellencies, dear friends of Africa present today, allow me to first thank the organizing committee for African ambassadors for having prepared for us a very interesting and informative program. And today we start with a very, very important topic, that of energy in the African continent. Before I go on, I would like to also thank the GECF for allowing us to use their facilities. And of course, it's not by accident that we are discussing a topic which they are tasked to look into in the world. And today it is Africa's turn that we're going to talk about. Your Excellency, allow me again to thank Mr. Abdu Hanslo for his organizational skills in inviting prominent speakers, which we're going to listen today. Of course, we have Ambassador Dr. Bashir Issa Al-Sharawi. He's a former ambassador to the Republic of South Africa. He has a touch into the African continent, and I'm sure he's part of us. Can you give him a round of applause? Excellencies, we have another very important speaker by the name of Dr. Benjamin Org, who is an oil gas specialist in the African continent. And I'm sure he's going to share with us why, up to the date, they haven't discovered oil or gas in Eswatini.
The future of natural gas in Africa is at an important junction. Africa accounts for 6% of global marketed gas production today and 10% by 2050. Since 2010, there have been major gas discoveries in every part of the continent. Over 40% of global gas discoveries between 2011 and 2018 were in Africa. Immense finds in East Africa, Mozambique and Tanzania were followed by more in Egypt, West Africa in Mauritania and Senegal, and in South Africa. Hence, by 2050, almost 1/5 of the increase in global natural gas production is said to be sourced from Africa. These resources offer new opportunities for Africa's energy and industrial development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the GECF mission and priority objectives are centered on fostering cooperation and dialogue among producers, between producers and consumers, between governments and energy-related industries. The GECF always welcomes opportunities for new partnerships. At the heart of the GECF long-term strategy is the idea that information exchange and dialogue are the primary mechanisms behind coordinated gas market developments. In spite of all, I would like to make a reference to the words of one of the great sons of Ghana and Africa, the former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan, by saying that sometimes we have to realize that the collective interest, the international interest, is also the national interest. On that note, I welcome you all again to the Gas Exporting Countries Forum and wish you successful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhadam. Thank you, Dr. Mukhadam. And thank you to the GECF as well for accommodating us at this very appropriate venue and for making us feel right at home. Your Excellencies, respected speakers and panelists, as representatives, leaders and children of 19 countries, 21 countries in Africa here today, we, through Africa's difficult past, sit here today as a testament to the strength, diversity and tenacity of Africa and its people. Through all the difficulties and adversities on our continent, we have been catapulted to the world stage as a continent rich in culture, resources, agriculture and energy. No longer can Africa be ignored for its contribution to the world, and it is therefore that we, as children of Africa, should take our place at the table as a continent that adds the utmost of value to the world in so many ways. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, Africa's population will grow by 63% between 2018 and 2040, with India at 18% and China at 1.42%, making Africa the largest population growth in the world over this period. The question therefore at hand is, are we as Africa ready for this happening over the next 21 years? And what plans have we put in place to make sure that Africa will survive? This growth in population will mean that more inflows are required constantly to grow our economies, to sustain our people. It is therefore vitally important that we explore our resources within our countries and find solutions to add these vital resources to the global demand as it stands. Africa has at least 5 of the 10 necessary energy resources, which is oil, natural gas, hydrogen, coal, and nuclear power. In addition to this, it has successfully implemented wind power systems, biomass technologies, and solar power. So with this, it is proven that once again, Africa has not been idle in terms of technology, and it is not a barren landscape without value or consideration. Today, we are here to speak about energy on the African continent. And to take this conversation further, we are joined by 2 prolific speakers with the necessary experience and background to engage on the topic. Our first speaker is the former Qatar ambassador to South Africa, as mentioned, His Excellency Dr. Bashir Isa al-Shirawi. His Excellency spent many years in Africa and South Africa and have engaged at the highest levels when it comes to the topic at hand. He will shed light on energy in Africa, coming from one of the wealthiest energy producing countries in the world. He will share with us vital observations and guidance on how Africa could best deal with this very precious commodity. Our second speaker will be the renowned academic and scholar, Dr. Benjamin Org. Dr. Org holds a PhD, and I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correct, because that's, unfortunately, my English only goes that far. Dr. Benjamin Org holds a PhD in geography from the University of Paris, and is a recognized and published academic in oil and gas on the African continent. The 2 speakers will deliver their respective presentations to the audience, and thereafter we will enter into an engaging panel discussion around the topic. We invite Your Excellencies to please take the opportunity to address the panel, as the floor will be open for your kind comments and questions. So without any further delay, I would respectfully like to call Dr. Bashir Isa al-Shirawi to the podium for his presentation.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's my pleasure pleasure, really, distinguished excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I just couldn't not participate in such enlightening meeting, especially coming from Ambassador Musa, really, with whom I value at personal level as well as professional level. I've spent an international relationship and in a multinational organization as economic advisor in the former Prime Minister and Foreign Minister after being transferred from the Ministry of Interior to Foreign Affairs. I'll be talking to you on my own responsibility, without any affiliation to the government, because as you know that I'm retired, but I'm very interested in geopolitical issues. To prepare that one, I was engaged in for Thursday and Friday even, and Saturday, a very extensive meeting and conference. So I didn't have the time to what, but I'm looking into shed some light about issues on energy investment opportunities between Qatar or GCC from my own perspective and African nations, challenges and prospects in terms of reflection on geopolitical issues. In preparation for such a talk, I came to understanding to a last meeting with the Chancellor of Germany with African Union, and I emphasized on keenly on why things not going forward, since Africa is a future continent. It's not my own, it's American own, it's a Russian own, it's Chinese own, and from GCC perspective, for just in case of South Africa, I said the Saudis and Qataris, I saw the maximum investment was around $1 billion, or through funds or corporation. While engagement internationally, as His Excellency Ambassador of Kenya was telling me, you guys are forgetting your roots and history, our connecting to you. I said, yeah, I have to reflect on that one. Having said that, the GCC also deserve to have from African nation, a very proud nation of people, really, and culture and heritage. And we have a root. Even I was telling His Excellency, Kenyan ambassador, that we found that when I was serving in 2010, we had a very remote village with Arab descendants there, pure Arab, living there. There is a connectivities between our people here. So why things not going there? That's mean institutional aspect. I hear that one even with the deliberation of Mrs. Merkel and some intra-African free trade men. Why they are not delivering that business? So the accountability playing very important role. Transparency, and I think I was telling to Abdu-Raof while we were sitting here, we need to have comparative advantage for Africa, as if I quote Michael Porter, comparative nation or competitive nation, how you can get attention of one of the wealthiest countries in maybe recent history, we can say. To see why other countries are having access to the attention while Africa is still. But then, having said that, His Highness has, recently visited Africa with very prominent delegation to push to African relationship to Qatar, and we have to capitalize on that one. So have been some interested visit to the area. But why is not delivering? That means we have to revisit. the underpinning issues, not getting things forward. We came to the transparency and like this everybody's there. But I know a vibrant in South Africa, my experience, I can say to you, vibrant press discussion, engaging with from political parties. Why people saying there's no transparency? Why people are concerned about that there are now accountability? The image. International relation is what? Perception is reality. So now I was engaging in that one. I wanted to see, even I went to the South African think tanks. My distinguished friends maybe will touch base on me. I sat keenly listening to the same issues, passionately today in a German TV show, but from YouTube. They were assessing the meeting, Mrs. Merkel and the African leader. The two ladies, South African ladies and Sudanese young lady. And they were saying the same thing. They are trying to say, okay, why we are waiting now the others to come to us? Why should not we be proactive toward the others? Chinese are engaging, Russians are engaging, Americans are engaging. We recently hear, even President Trump was talking about Africa. And there are strategic relationship between GCC and the three aforementioned countries, Why we not, or African leaders, or African business people, bring joint ventures, solid things, to on the table of discussion. For example, Qatar, when I said, you have to maximize your strategic alliance from your African side and GCC side. If you trust one part, the other part can bring for you support, maximizing your best available resources, geopolitical affiliation. Let them get them together into joint understanding. And I think there are some initiatives in matter, since as I said to you I'm reflecting on my understanding after this services and also in participating in fora of semi-understanding of issues confronting Africa and South GCC. Why things not going forward? You have to address these issues. Rules of law. I don't mean about certain country. I don't want to disparaging or disrespecting. No, Africa has shown its maturity. Africa has shown its willingness to be engaging the world. So why it's not being emphasized in that matter? Why we keep just remaining at a hearing about corruption? Why, for example, I think in Namibia or Mozambique, I don't know which TV show from Al Jazeera, and the person was with Mozambique. So why? It's good to have, nobody, I recently, as far as I'm concerned, what my memory is concerned, that I didn't see somebody, be asked to remove from office after a TV show. In Africa, that is a plus. Nothing wrong with it. You can go to the people arguing there is no transparency or nothing. This is a show. This is an example. Climate investment. Upgrading the laws. Make it, modify it, because you need the institution you have, a very energetic, in the SADC countries which I engaged seriously there. Find out very active people are there. Why not to be having them, like a missionary part of your engaging in investment opportunity seeking? And also your partners. Let's have some joint project to bring it to this part of the area. And the synergism, what does it mean? When you pool your resources and you get your international partner, you create for yourself stature in getting a business. alternative negotiated investment opportunities, if I may say it, in terms of negotiation, with all due respect to my official. So we came to the understanding now that Africa has established itself.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your comments. Your rambling was indeed a lesson to me. So in that regard, it was not a rambling. I have the extreme pleasure and honor to call Dr. Benjamin Org to the podium to present what I think would also be an exceptionally good presentation, an enlightening presentation, and we can all learn from you, Dr. Welcome to the podium.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. We talked about this event with the ambassador from South Africa since a long time, since almost a year, and I'm very happy to be here. I always feel that it's more useful to talk about the people that will be directly concerned by the oil gas sector in Africa. That's why I'm teaching a lot in Africa, mostly in Mauritania and Mozambique. And I'm trying to give also courses in Senegal, because to have the past in mind, like what has been done in other oil countries in the world, it will maybe avoid some mistakes for the new oil and gas countries in Africa. So it's very important to understand the mistakes of the other, to avoid new mistakes for the new oil and gas countries in Africa. And I will talk about it a lot today. So I divided my presentation in 3 main topics. So the oil and gas basics in Africa, so I will give you a little bit of figures, maybe it will be a little bit boring, but it's just to be sure that we are on the right page when we are talking about oil and gas sectors in Africa. The next big oil and gas frontiers, meaning all the new oil and gas discoveries like in the last 10 years or so. And the third point, which will be my conclusion, the QP investment in Africa, which is something quite new and that is moving very fast. So as we are in Qatar, I thought that it was a little bit stupid not to talk about Qatar petroleum investment in Africa. So, this is the map of the continent. You have in green all the producers of oil in Africa. As you can see on the right side of the slide, the continent is producing 8.2 million barrels per day. In the whole world, it's 100 million. So 8.2% of the oil produced in the world are produced in Africa, which is not enormous, but which is quite significant, because on this volume, half of it is exported, because very low consumption in Africa. Okay, the consumption in Africa is 4 million barrels per day. And it's mostly concentrated in the north, so in Maghreb, and in South Africa. If you are taking into account Maghreb plus South Africa, it's 50% of the oil consumption in the whole Africa. Meaning that under the Maghreb and in the northern part of South Africa, 2 million barrels per day are consumed by at least 800 million inhabitants, meaning almost nothing, no consumption of oil and gas, very little amount. You have on the left side of the slide all the new oil and gas producing countries. So in Sudan, 1999, it doesn't mean that discoveries have been done in 1999. All the productions of Sudan, it's from fields that have been discovered in the 70s by Chevron, but it took 20 years to be put in production because of civil war, because of political instability. And Chevron didn't come back in this country, and this is the Chinese, the Malaysian, and the Indian companies that went back to the discoveries of Chevron and just developed what have already been found 20 years before. Okay, so it doesn't mean that this is recent discoveries, it's very old discoveries, but put into production in 1999 in Sudan. Chad, exactly the same kind of things. Put into production in 2003, but this is very old discoveries. And Exxon Petronas and Chevron put into production the discoveries in 2003. And you have always the same problem. Why it has been not put into production, maybe sometimes political instability, but also because it's landlocked discoveries. So you need to construct a very long pipeline and sometimes to pass through another country, such as in Chad with Cameroon, to export the oil. So very complex project. Ghana 2010, Ghana produced a little bit of oil before, but the real big production began in 2010 with the Jubilee field. Niger, 2011, same as Sudan and Chad, very old discoveries that have been put into production only in 2011 by Chinese company, by CNPC. And it had been discovered by Western companies that didn't find that the discovery was enough to be put into production in the 80s or in the 90s. Uganda and Kenya, so they are not producing yet. Uganda, it's discovered in 2006, and I will explain after why it has been so long to put into trucks to go from the northern part of Kenya, you see the blocks on the top of the country, to Mombasa port, which is a very long road, very long way. So it's not really economical, it doesn't make an economical sense, but it's to push the investor to develop the blocks. Same for Uganda, you don't have a final investment decision in Kenya. So I cannot tell you it will be developed. No, I can't say that now. You still have some problems, mostly in the Attorney General office, regarding tax that have not been decided between the two different partners. Okay, so you have oil in Uganda and in Kenya. It's not developed, and we don't have a decision for to be sure that it will be developed. But it's big. It's very significant. Normally, they will find an agreement to develop these two projects. Other big area that will change dramatically in terms of oil and gas, it's MSGBC basin, which means Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, Bissau, and Conakry. So this is a new basin of oil and gas. And Mauritania is producing oil since 2006, but that stopped in 2017. It was very limited discovery. But what we are talking about is gas, and it's a big field which is straddling the border between Mauritania and Senegal. It's called Tortue. It has been found in 2015, and it will be put into production within 2 or 3 years. The final investment decision has been made. So this is in development. We are not in the Uganda and Kenya case. But this is not the only discovery in the region. The Senegal managed to discover also some oil with the SNE field, which is quite significant discovery of about 300 million barrels in place, so 2 times less than Kenya in one only field. And a couple of weeks ago, Mauritania, also only in its water, not a transborder discoveries, has been finding a new discovery which is called Maswa, which will be as big as the one of Tortue. So it will completely change the economy of Mauritania in Senegal within 10 years, okay? Gas and gas for Mauritania, gas and oil for Senegal. Of course, when you have one discovery, all the companies are coming. So now you have Exxon, you have Total, you have Shell, all of them are in this region. 5 years ago, you had only Total, which was involved as a major in the region. So it's going to change dramatically. For Gambia, BP entered Gambia. And also in Bissau, they are sharing one zone between Bissau and Senegal. We have also the Chinese of Sinuk that are involved. So it will dramatically change these two countries, and maybe you will have some new discoveries in the coming years. The third interesting region where you might have some changes in the future is between South Africa and Namibia. So this is the more exciting place for Total in Africa right now, South Africa. They are putting a lot of trust in the geology, and they managed to discover one deposit of gas. You see it's called Block 11B and Block 12B. It's next to Port Elizabeth on the coast. But it's very challenging in terms of exploration. It's very costly, it's very deep, so they need to assess if the discovery is as big as possible to make it, to put it into production. So you will have 3 new drillings in 2020 in South Africa, in these blocks, where you have Qatar Petroleum involved also. And also in Namibia, so just on the border between Namibia and South Africa, lots of interest from Total and from Shell that are going to drill next year. So this is something that the geologists are thinking that it could be really big. Now it's oil, mostly gas prone, maybe you will find some oil, but most of the discoveries that have been made are mainly gas. Okay, so this one is real, it's not just a geologist hope. Mozambique and Tanzania. The only game changer in Africa these last 15 years is Mozambique. The other one will not change dramatically the market, neither Uganda, neither Kenya, it's too little. But when we are talking about game changer, Mozambique is the only one. In 10 years, Mozambique found as much gas as Nigeria is 60 years. So in 2 blocks, they managed to find 150 TCF, which is exactly the same amount that you have in Algeria, and it's only in 2 blocks. So this is the 2 blocks on the northern part of Mozambique coast in the region, the province of Cabo Delgado. So you have ENI on one block with Exxon, and on the other block you have Total that are going to put into production some gas. Two final investment decisions have been made. Okay, one for a boat which is called an FLNG, which will be commissioned within 3 years by ENI, and 2 trains on the ground of 12 million tons per year that will be commissioned within 4 to 5 years. But if we are putting into production the whole discoveries, they will produce at least 2/3 of the Qatar production right now. Okay, we're talking about 50 million tons, and here it's 77, even if they want to go to 110, 2/3 of the production of Qatar. So it's absolutely enormous. Have in mind that Mozambique is 3 times less rich than the average African country. So it's very, very poor, Mozambique, because of civil war, lots of problems. So it will completely change the landscape, political landscape, and economic landscape of Mozambique. In Tanzania, they made also some significant discoveries in the last 10 years. It's way less, it's around 40 TCF, so 3 times less than Mozambique. But it's quite significant. The problem is the relationship between the companies, so it's mainly Shell and Equinor. Equinor is from Norway, and Shell is from Great Britain and Netherlands. And the government, they don't manage to find an agreement on the tax issues. And moreover, you have the intention of the President Magufuli to change what is in the contract, meaning they want, in case of problem between the state and the partners, that the judicial process should be in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania, not in an international court of justice. This is impossible for an oil company to put billions of dollars in a project where if there is a problem with the government, this is the judicial process in the country that will decide. Most of the time it's international process. So Magufuli wants the problems to be dealt in Dar es Salaam and nowhere else. So it's blocking completely the development of the oil and gas development and discoveries in Tanzania. So up to now, not a single decision. I don't think there will be any decision within 1 or 2 years. There is a lot of gas, but they need to find an agreement on the tax and on many other aspects, such as the judicial issue I told you about. To finish Qatar petrol investment in Africa, the involvement of Qatar Petrol in Africa has been really minimal for a long time. They have been interested in Mauritania within 15 years ago. They wanted to explore some blocks with Total. They didn't make any discovery, so 2 drillings were absolutely dry. And they had a limited also investment in Morocco. They exited these 2 countries a couple of years ago. Since 2018, there is a very new strategy of Qatar Petroleum, is to invest heavily in Africa. Heavily outside Qatar, but heavily in Africa. There is a real political decision that has been taken to take some risk in Africa. So they entered, since the last 12 months, they entered Mozambique with Exxon, South Africa and Namibia with Total, Morocco once again, and Kenya with ENI. And it's all frontier basin, meaning it's very risky exploration. They might not find anything, But the common point with all these investments is that they are made only with Western majors. So they know very well their partners, they are trusting their partners, and most of the time, their partners are investing in Qatar already. So they know each other very well, and they know they will not lose their money for nothing. Qatar Petroleum is definitely more risk taker since 1 year, but it's not only in Africa, they are in Mexico, they are in Cyprus, they are in many countries in the world, but they are really more risk taker. And they are not investing only where you found someone already discovered deposits, okay? They go sometimes with the major where you didn't find anything on the block, and you try your luck, you drill, and maybe you find, maybe you don't find. But it's a real risk, so it's a complete different paradigm for Qatar Petroleum. Of course, for all these private companies, these big majors, to give access to their exploration block in Africa or elsewhere, it's also thinking like maybe they will get some more business in Qatar. Okay, they're not doing that just because they like Qatar. It's also, okay, we are giving you some access to these blocks that, in our opinion, are very good blocks, and in exchange, we would like to be sure that maybe we could have a little bit more of a business in Qatar. All of them are in Qatar except ENI, okay? But all of them, all the others, are in Qatar. So this is a real bet that Qatar Petroleum is taking. I think they are going to announce very soon a very big other investment in Africa. But this is a political decision, not only geological decision. This is political. We want to invest in Africa, and QP is the only company that are really taking some very bold decision regarding African investment. Thank you.
A very big thank you to Dr. Benjamin Org, and I know that there's probably going to be a barrage of questions from the audience, and to answer His Excellency Ambassador Dlamini's pending question, Dr. Org did say he'll personally go and see if he can find oil in Swazi. Moving swiftly, thank you, Your Excellency, I was about to call you. Moving on, we will now go into the panel discussion with our two experts. We have prepared a few, should I say teasers, or should I rather just say questions for you, and we hope to engage you on some very vital questions that could benefit Africa as a whole. And I do encourage Your Excellencies, please, to participate. The floor is open for your questions and comments. The one thing I know about diplomats, you're not shy. So there will certainly, I believe, there will be questions that will come from the floor. But to start it all off, I'll make my way over to you.
So, to start the panel discussion of Your Excellency and Dr. Org, you know, earlier I mentioned in my introduction that 63% increase in the population of Africa over the next 21 years, ending 2040. So that growth is obviously going to put a lot of pressure on the African economy going forward. And there is obviously the situation as it stands at the moment. Africa would be in a dire position had nothing been done to improve the economies throughout Africa if the population should almost double by 63%. So my question basically is, in your opinion, with everything happening and listening to your presentation, Dr. Org, everything happening in Africa and the exploration happening in Africa, is Africa ready? And with all this happening, with the interest in Africa, is it a sustainable solution for this major issue over the next 21 years?
is exploration is something that could help the development of the country? Well, you know, if the main problem is that Africa doesn't mean anything. You have a lot of disparities and differences between African countries and region within the different African countries. So you have real growth in some of the regions in Africa, and you have some really worrisome countries that most of the time are the ones that are maybe in terms of demography rising very fast, too fast considering the development of the economy, and where you don't have a real development, meaning people are getting poorer and poorer, to be simple. I mean, oil and gas could be a real boost for an economy. It's just a problem of management and governance. I'm not a World Bank expert, so I have to be a little bit more bold. It's not difficult to have good laws to develop the right way a country when you have some oil and gas income. We have to take some good example, and we have the ambassador of one country where good example have been taken in terms of oil and gas is Ghana. Ghana did very well in terms of laws, in terms of local content, meaning how you make sure that the bigger parts of the oil and gas sector are taken by locals, not only locals working in the oil and gas sector, but local companies owned by local people. This is local content. Ghana did a wonderful job on it, and they have also one advantage compared to a lot of other countries is the level of education is quite significant, even in terms of engineers. So when the oil companies arrived over there, they had already some very good students that they can train in 2 years to be able to work in the oil and gas sector. So education, I'm sorry, it's everything. It's absolutely everything. The rest is just literature. You need to make sure that your students got the right training and to be able to answer to the market. Okay, so Ghana is a good example. Many other countries in Africa can follow. I think we have to be quite optimistic for Senegal too, for the same reason. The level of education is also quite significant, but we have to be really worried for the old producing countries, such as you all know, all of them. Bad practices have been taken, and it will not change until you have some oil and gas to produce.
Thank you very much, Dr. Og. Your Excellency.
Thank you. I think Mr. Raof and Dr. Raof, yeah, I think he's touching based on the essential that in Africa, you know, there are some certain sectors are well developed. You cannot find it but in Europe or United States. And you have some sectors as a mixture of old Soviet Union, Russian, Chinese, Arab, socialist, what you can find them there. And then the third sectors, this is what my experience I always say, South Africa, Southern Africa, Africa, 3 continents in one continent, 3 countries in one country, 3 political systems in one. And then one you see underdeveloped, unfortunately. And this is what I said now, the perception here, how to. I'm glad that he said about the experiment of Qatar. You know, now Qatar is being engaging, you know, Africa and risk-averse country. Not out of philanthropy, goodwilling, but Qatar has been targeted with such cruel, inhumane blockade from where? From our sisterly, brotherly countries. So, having said that, we need you as South African, or African, sorry, it's all my hat, I have to remember, remind myself of it. African nation should be engaging, you know, built on a successful example. Mentioned here, you know, some of the synergism, bring those success example to develop underdeveloped sectors in your countries. I know in international relations, which maybe you figured it out, my interest in geopolitical issues, even I had economic folder when I was serving South Africa, that you have to use, for example, the previous attempts, why has not been successful. Let's build on that. See, as Dr. Oak said, that there have been, somebody is still now under, but we have some example that is ripe to get the benefit out of it. Let's emulate such a successful example and try to reassess, not moving. We don't say it for failure because we don't want to put in a state of mind of failure things. No, we never have failure. Chinese saying, there is no crisis, no failure. There are some opportunities. So I think here the education comes to that societal psychic. Africa has given the world so many examples, heritage and revolutionary culture, because I was involved in cultural issues from Africa. So in economic also you can give some, because you don't let this opportunity to pass. Since you are entrusted with the future of the continent. So how paradigm shift now to see where are the niches in your countries. It hurt me when I read about intra-African nation, still now turtle movement there. Obstacle that internationally, the successful, you said, jurisdictional issues, whether it be over the country or within the country. Why should we have at this stage? We should be proactive, engaging. As we need them to engage us, we engage them also. Because you got mature countries, leadership out of, forget what the perception there, even it's reality now. No longer we can afford to be captivated of future perception about our leadership or about our bureaucracy. They are not holy verses. We can modify them. So I think that one, self-critique, engaging the young. I think the young you have, I'm proud of being a Qatari. Look at our leadership. Imagine that such a leadership, young leadership, being exposed to unexpected backstabbing, but being flourishing, engaging the world. Emulate that one. Doesn't mean that the wise, I was sitting with Uncle Bob one time and he offered me pancake when I submitted my credential. And then he said, Your Excellency, why you don't have the cake? I said, Your Excellency, in my tradition, we have to wait for the elder, a respectful one, to finish, then I'll eat. I said, oh, you're being very good ambassador. So that's one we want. The elder leadership, wise people, we need to get the wisdom out. I like this, the council of wisdom in the world. See the experiment, why we are not using. Sudan went through transformation now. Do they need to go back to the same old thing? It's a sign of insanity, according to Einstein. If we want to apply, I'm sorry, Your Excellency, if I give, because you are my brother, like African nation, we have to get some example here. To do the same way of thinking what brought us to the same problem is a sign of insanity. We have to have paradigm shift. We have to go forward. This is maybe later on. I'm sorry for taking longer than expected. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you, Dr. Oak. Are there any questions from the floor?
Thanks a lot. This goes to Dr. Benjamin. I also pronounce it right. That's my French teacher. If they tell me otherwise. Please allow me to express my gratitude to you. You seem to be very knowledgeable geography. And your geography is very deep. And therefore I want to ask you something first from geography. That's what maybe to do with the oil and gas. And this is mainly in geography. Is that in your own mind as somebody knowledgeable in geology, what is the socio-economic or socio-political impact of this drilling oil and gas all over the world, not only in Africa? Assuming that as you take it out, you're leaving a big hole there. How will the world react to this big hole you're leaving there? How you are filling it after that? But this oil and gas have been being pumped for many years around the world. There could be some geological impact, maybe. I don't know. On that aside, another question I would like to say is that about Africa now. Actually, your explanation is real. You are also very knowledgeable in gas and oil exploration all over the world, and I was very impressed how you know about deep of my country. You must have been living in Kenya before.
I've been there.
You've been there, so you know Talo very well.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Correct, Talo. Now, what I want to ask you about, that impression you created, or it is real, not you recreated, but it's real, that there's a lot of sociopolitical problems in Africa all over that. Some of them are economic, that make the exploration difficult or on hold, or some political manipulation, like the example you gave in Tanzania. I believe, I could be wrong, the world or the big companies, the so-called unions, they're not take the risk. They don't take the risk. But you congratulated Qatar, police for risk takers. The non-risk takers, the big ones, I think they're just happy because there is oil they are pumping somewhere. If I assume there was no oil somewhere and those of the Africa only are the one that had oil with all those problems, don't you think they would have gone to Africa all this time? Thank you.
Well, when I said that the majors were not risk takers, the Western majors, in fact, they are investing a lot in Africa, but this is in countries that they know very well since the 60s, since the 70s. Okay, for instance, Shell discovered the oil in Nigeria in the late 50s. They are still there, and they have invested dozens of billions since a long time. But all the recent discoveries have been made by junior companies. So in terms of cash that is injected in the oil and gas sectors in Africa, of course, majors are investing way more than juniors. But they are not, in terms of their strategy, they are not risk takers. And because the geologists are really worried not to discover and to be fired just after, lots of responsibility. Whereas little companies, they are managing to find a lot of money, because these juniors, most of the time, have been funded by geologists from the majors that were absolutely fed up with the lack of risk appetite, and they funded their companies, and they are supported by investment funds that think that those guys are jewels and they will find some oil and gas. That's what happened. So I didn't say that the Western majors are not investing in Africa. If you are comparing the money invested in Africa by the majors on one side and by juniors on the other side, the majors are putting way more money. But in countries that they know already since a very long time. So I don't know if I answered correctly the question, the second questions. You wanted some other details?
Okay, this one I was saying, if at all the majors, so called the majors, if at all there was no oil in those majors that they are pumping right now, and only Africa was left with all those problems that you have outlined, don't you think they would still go there?
So you're talking about the majors or the oil companies in general?
The majors.
Okay, to to be very simple, let's take the example of Mozambique. You have security problems in Cabo Delgado since 2-3 years now. So in the region where you have oil and gas. Islamic problems, but in fact we don't really know. Even the Secret Service of Mozambique doesn't really understand the problems. The oil companies, so Total and ExxonMobil, who are going to invest in Cabo Delgado, they will invest at any cost because the reserves are very big. And they are used to invest in difficult places such as Nigeria or Iraq. They invest in every possible countries, even with many instabilities, political, whatever, if the reserves are big. If this is not big, it could be abandoned because it doesn't really make any sense to invest in a place where you have little reserves and a lot of risk. So it's really depending on how big the reserves are, and if this is big, they'll go everywhere in the world because they want to make money, and they know with a big field that they can make money even if there is a massive instability in the country. But take Tanzania, there is no insecurity problem in Tanzania, or less than in Mozambique, but issue of tax, political instability, not in terms of the party on power, but political instability is when you are changing the laws all the time during the process of development of a field. They prefer not to invest at all. It will stay over there, but it's 4 times less than what we have in Mozambique. So you see, maybe they would be a little bit more proactive, the companies, if you had 180 TCF of gas in Tanzania, such as the one you have in Mozambique. So it's always a ratio between the size of the reserves and all the possible political problems that you are facing. But most of the time, an oil company really can work everywhere in the world. It's just a matter of how much money I can get from a situation. If this is too risky, with little reserves, they may go. So it depends on the size of the reserves.
Geological.
I didn't really get what you meant. When the field is done.
What I meant is that where you are involved, you are very busy with oil and gas all over the world. What will happen if all this is taken out and this geologically, there will be a vacuum down there. The environmental impact. After the oil and gas is pumped out, there will remain a big hole. The world will collapse or what?
Yes, it will squeeze.
That is what I want to know. President, that's what
Well, I cannot answer globally, but you have some very big problems, such as in Netherlands. One of the biggest fields in Europe is in Netherlands. And they have massive problems because of what you are describing. Some places you have houses destroyed because of instability of the earthquake. So they are decreasing the production because of all these things that you are describing. Are they going to do the same if you have the same problems in an African countries? I'm not sure. But in Europe, you have a lot of civil society that will put pressure on the government. Okay, if you cannot produce without any kind of liabilities, just don't produce. So it's depending on the local politics, I'm afraid.
Just to elaborate about the second part, not the last one, the last one. I was thinking about, we had in economic class at the PhD level, and the world was facing recession. And the teacher or the professor posed the question, how we go back to recovery. He said, this is the essence of capitalism. We looked around, maybe he's a political propagandist or something. We said, no, don't worry, I know you guys coming from third world, you think of everything in terms of politics. But so go see Back to Africa movie. The capitalism has its own internal process. The issues of if there is nothing, you cannot. They'll never stay still doing nothing. The opportunities will be explored whenever they want time.
Thank you.